This is CPR Media Network, coming to you live from the USA.
From all of us at CPR Worldwide Media to all of you, Merry Christmas. Hey, who put eggnog in my eggnog?
Christmas, we wish you a Merry Christmas, we wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Good tidings we bring to you again. Good tidings for Christmas and a Happy New Year. We all know that Santa's coming, we all know that Santa's coming, we all know that Santa's coming, and soon he'll be here. Tidings we bring to you and your kin. Good tidings for Christmas and a Happy New Year. We wish you a Merry Christmas. We wish you a Merry Christmas. We wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
All of us at CPR Worldwide Media would like to wish all of you a very Merry Christmas.
Why do cities shine so bright? It's the glow of opportunities, of ideas bouncing off one another, of countless people, every one of us, striving to succeed. Right now, in cities everywhere, ideas are being born. New thinking that will put us in awe of what people are capable of. That's what lights cities up. And helping people and their ideas to burn even brighter, so that communities, businesses, and you and I can grow. What if a bank made that its job? For more than 200 years, Citi's job has been to help empower people and business. Now, around the world, it's wherever people gather, wherever ideas come alive. It's wherever you are. The world's city.
It's not about how many miles you can get out of the C-Max Hybrid. It's about how much life you can fit into it. The Ford C-Max Hybrid, with an EPA estimated range of 540 miles on a tank of gas, and all the room you need to enjoy the trip. Go stretch out. Go further.
Come on, Harry!
Dumb and Dumber 2 is the #1 movie in America.
Am I right? What?
Seriously, it's #1.
These guys are morons! I like her a lot.
Dumb and Dumber 2, rated PG-13, now playing.
However dark the night, however dim our hopes, the light is always there within you.
His family gave him hope.
You fight harder than those other guys, and you win.
His spirit gave him strength.
We're gonna die out here.
We're not dying!
And in his darkest hour,
who is the Olympic athlete?
His faith would not be broken.
Hello, Mother and Father. This will be the first time in 2 years that you'll have heard my voice. I wish you all a Merry Christmas. Your loving son, Louis.
On Christmas Day, experience the unbelievable true story of one man's journey home.
You can take it. You can make it. Just gotta believe you can.
If I can take it, I can make it.
Unbroken, rated PG-13, Christmas Day.
Read something recently worth thinking about. It's the soldier, not the campus organizer, who's given us freedom to demonstrate. It's the soldier, not the reporter, who's given us freedom of the press. It's the soldier, not the poet, who's given us freedom of speech. It's the soldier who serves under the flag, who defends the protesters' right to burn the flag. Isn't it time now to demonstrate that we support our troops? Were it not for the brave, there'd be no land of the free.
Fred Thompson's message was brought to you by citizensunited.org.
Welcome to the State Legislators Roundtable. Your host will be Charles Kacprowicz, Executive Director of Citizen Initiatives and Countermand Amendment. Our special legislator guests will be discussing important issues in their states that relate to federal encroachment on states' rights. The nonpartisan Article 5 single-issue countermand amendment can remedy many states' issues peacefully without the consent of Congress, the courts, or the executive branch. We will reclaim our constitutional republic soon. The nonpartisan countermand amendment is the missing piece of the Article 5 puzzle. Our nation is coming apart at the seams. So, we are countermanding.
Folks, James Madison was an American statesman, political theorist, and the fourth president of the United States. He is hailed as the father of the Constitution for being instrumental in the drafting of the Constitution and as the key champion and author of the United States Bill of Rights. He served as a politician much of his adult life. Here's what James Madison said about the rights of the states. The powers delegated by the proposed Constitution to the federal government are few and defined. Those which are to remain in the state governments are numerous and indefinite. The form of federal powers will be exercised principally on external objects as war, peace, negotiation, and foreign commerce. The powers reserved to the several states will extend to all the objects which, in the ordinary course of affairs, concerns the lives, liberties, and properties of the people, and the internal order, improvement, and prosperity of the state. Folks, thank you for tuning in. This is the State Legislators Roundtable. My name is Charles Kacprowicz. I am the Executive Director for Citizen Initiatives and the Countermand Amendment. Roundtable discussions with state legislators and community leaders center around critical issues in the states as they relate to federal encroachment on states' rights and how the nonpartisan Countermand Amendment can remedy many of them safely and quickly. This is not a gotcha forum. We are not here to back our guests into a corner. We encourage serious discussions of issues important to our guests and their states. Subjects can include taxation, criminal law, energy policies, healthcare, social issues, federal land grabs, court decisions, education, executive orders, unfunded liabilities, EPA, BLM, the IRS, and more. You will learn how to protect your enumerated rights in the Constitution and how the states and their citizens can identify, define, and protect their unenumerated rights in the 9th and 10th Amendments peacefully and permanently. Roundtable members tonight are Sandy Toth, our Executive Coordinator and Georgia State Director, Mike Coons, our National Director and Alaska State Director, Kelly Gordon, our National Coordinator, Texas State Director, and our producer. We now have 15 sponsored states for the nonpartisan Article 5 Countermand Amendment. We could have a total of 20 sponsored states for the amendment in 30 days. We've had the honor of meeting many of the country's leading legislators on the State Legislators Roundtable. I see these state legislators more as statesmen than politicians. They are trying to find solutions to the many problems their citizens face, especially as they relate to encroachment by the federal government. The State Legislators Roundtable has been growing. We have become one of the fastest growing radio talk shows on the internet. To learn more about the Countermand Amendment, go to countermands.us. That's with an S. Countermands.us. Also, call your friends, relatives, associates. Let them know that they too can tune into tonight's show, especially with the special guests that we have on the program. tell them to go to cprworldwidemedia.com/live-radio. They will also be able to participate in our online chat as well. Ask them to go to facebook.com/groups, GROUPS, / CPR Worldwide Media. Also, at the URL address, there's a chat as well. You will be able to call in if you have comments or questions for our guests. You can use 956-217-0031. Now, tonight we have two very special guests that will be part of our program. We have the Honorable Dennis Hedke from Kansas, and also we have the Honorable Peter DeGraaf from Kansas. And Michael, why don't you tell us a little about Peter DeGraaf, and then I'll come back with Representative Hedke.
Okay. Peter he's been in the legislature since 2009. He chairs the General Government Budget Committee. He also chairs the Financial Institutions Committee, and he's a member on the Insurance Joint Committee on Corrections and Juvenile Justice Oversight and Appropriations Committee. Welcome, Representative DeGraaf.
Thank you, Mike, and appreciate you and your team, Charles.
Thank you, sir. And we're going to get right back to you in a moment. I want to introduce also Representative Hedke, Dennis Hedke from Kansas. Here's a quote that Representative Hedke has made. "I will serve by providing leadership through policy making that advances the interest of all Kansans, focusing on local conditions while limiting the scope of government." Dennis is vested in Kansas, values Kansas as home for his family, and as his base for his business, a geoscience consulting partnership. He is a member of many, many committees. He's involved with national defense authorization, Second Amendment protection. He's introduced bills relating to the exercise of religion, prohibiting an abortion of an unborn human individual with a detectable fetal heartbeat, and I'm certainly in favor of that. Firearms, carrying concealed handguns, and many, many more. He has sponsored state constitutional amendments on the Human Life Amendment as well. Now, Senator Hedke, we've had you on the show once before, and we appreciate you coming back. And right now, you and Representative DeGraaf will be free to just share whatever is on your mind. I'm sure that there will be thousands of people in Kansas who will be listening to this show. This show is growing, and every show that we record, it is rebroadcast at least 7 times during the week, and we may have very many more than that that we don't know about. So, Senator Hedke, just feel free to share what's on your mind, and then we'll give Senator DeGraaf an opportunity as well.
Well, thank you, Charles. Minor correction: both Representative DeGraaf and myself are representatives and not senators in Kansas.
I'm so sorry, but I've got papers flying all over the place right now.
Just don't want our friends in the Senate to think that we're usurping their authority.
Charles has a tendency of promoting people.
Yes,
they're a bunch of good folks. I would say, since I've been on the program before, I think it was back in July, if I remember correctly, I would be happy to hand off to Representative DeGraaf to throw some thoughts out there from his perspective. I know he's also had some interest in the Convention of States, as have I, and we really believe that we have opportunities to move on multiple tracks to push back on this Leviathan that continues to grow in Washington, D.C., and continues to deplete our freedoms and work in directions which we know our citizens do not appreciate. So,
yes,
I'm going to hand it up to Pete.
Well, I certainly appreciate the opportunity to be on the show today and commend to the listeners for listening in. We do really need a groundswell of citizens across the nation calling forth for limiting the size and the scope of our government. I read a story about George Mason. George Mason was one of our founding fathers. Many consider him the Bill of Rights father. He was one of the 5 most frequent speakers during the Constitutional Convention, and actually did not want to sign the Constitution as written because of the Bill of Rights not being part of it. And as a result, he insisted that the convention provide some kind of an option other than simply Congress having the sole authority to make amendments to the Constitution. And so actually it was 2 other representatives, Governor Morris and Representative Geary, who made the amendment to actually allow the states to be part of the process, what we now know as Article 5, which was quickly used by George Mason once the Constitution was ratified.
Yes, very excellent. What we're going to consider here tonight, depending on how you want this conversation to go, because we want you to feel free to talk about whatever is important to you. But there is a thought about Article 5 that I think the audience needs to hear, and that is this. The one aspect that is very obvious is that it is a very simple article. You know, if in fact 2/3 of the states make application on Congress to convene a convention for the purpose of proposing amendments, Congress is obligated to convene the convention. Now, why did it happen? Why did they put it together in such a simple way? I think it's because the sovereign authority that the states had before the Constitutional Convention was finished was passed on to future generations of legislatures, including you two, that in Article 5 you would be able to define how to simplify the use of the article for the purpose of having a safe and quick and successful convention. And this idea that the convention has to be equivalent to the Constitutional Convention, forgive me, folks, but I have to say I believe that to be nonsense. The fact is that there is no such thing under Article 5 as a Constitutional Convention. There is an amendment convention, and it's for proposing amendments, but not to create a new Constitution. Well, we could talk more about that in a moment. Anyway, you feel free to comment on that as you'd like.
Well, Charles, I do agree that a runaway concern really is not an issue. The states control the process, whether it's a single issue convention or whether it's a broader-based calling of the convention of the states. But certainly the states are in control of that process, and the people and their representatives have to ratify whatever comes out of that convention, whether it be a single-issue convention or whether it be a broader convention of some kind. Whatever comes out of that convention is going to have to be qualified and ratified.
Yes, that's correct. And I believe that the confusion that, for example, on Thursday, I'm going to be speaking to a Senate committee in Louisiana. And one of the spokesmen that will be in that meeting is Michael Farris. He is the executive director, I guess, for the Convention of States. Now, I often make this comment that I see Convention of States as allies, but not as partners. And the reason that I say it that way is because they have an approach that I'm troubled with. And it's not just them, it's everyone else. We're the only Article 5 group that really wants you guys to hold on to your sovereign authority completely so that you don't delegate it or advocate it to Congress or the courts or to delegates even going to the convention. So we see the legislature as the sovereign body under Article 5 to define exactly what they want to do at the convention as long as it's for proposing amendments. And then they also become the deliberative body. So what they do is they send the delegate to the convention as ambassadors, not as free agents. And the other groups think that the delegates are free agents, but there's nothing in the Constitution that gives the delegate any authority at all. It's all in the state legislatures. So I'm concerned about that because I think if we do it properly, it can be quick. I think that we can get a convention done. In our case, the Countermand Amendment Convention. We could get it, not we, but the legislators with the delegates that they send could have the thing finished in 7 days. There'll be no deliberations. Why? Because they will represent the will of the legislatures. The legislatures will already have approved a pre-approved text for the amendment and also the delegate resolution, which binds the delegates to very specific things that they have to do, including the requirement that every state is to have one vote, not based on population. So we are setting ourselves apart here in the sense that the single issue approach, it goes beyond just having one amendment. It goes to the point of keeping in the state legislature sovereign deliberative authority so that the convention can be safe, I should say. Any comments, sir?
Well, certainly, I would disagree with that process, with your concern. I believe the states are still in control, even if there is a more general approach to a convention. One issue certainly can provide some direction, but the problem with the one issue, what I see with the counterman, and Charles, I'd certainly love your input on this, is that it's limited in scope. And right now we've got a huge problem, a problem we need to solve other than just piecemeal by one law after another. We need to change the entire process. And I think this is why George Madison was so insistent that we have some kind of an end run around Congress. And even if we have a delegation, those delegates can be controlled by the state legislatures. And whatever they come up with, again, is ultimately controlled, in essence, by the state legislatures. It takes only 14 states to say no to whatever comes out of that convention.
That's true. I agree with everything that you just said, Representative Cross, but I will add this. If the delegates are not bound to the specific instructions that the legislatures give them, now remember, a delegate resolution, as we're defining it, is between the legislature and their delegates, not interstate. When the purpose for that is to avoid the prohibitions that are in Article 1, Section 10, that prevent states from having interstate agreements without Congress's approval. We want to keep Congress out of this. We want you guys to be at the top of the chain here in deciding how that convention should go forward. But at any rate, the way that the Article 5 groups are proposing it right now will possibly bring as many as 534 politically charged delegates to the convention. Now, I'm absolutely certain there's no possibility for a constitutional convention under Article 5. And we can have another discussion on that as we want. But
I agree. Con is not possible.
That's right. But at the same time, mayhem is. And so let's take, for an example, if you're going to define the role of the convention and the delegates at the convention, let's say you're going to define them by subject. Well, in the case of COS has what? Reigning in government, they have term limits, and then they also have probably a balanced budget amendment, or it's something dealing with the budget for the federal government. Now you've got three broad subjects. Now you've got 534 politically charged delegates. California has 55. Wyoming has 1. Now that means, and New York has like 30 some, and Michigan 30. And the point is that the bigger states are going to have the sway in the beginning. So when the Constitutional Convention, before it was even convened, the biggest problem that they had to contend with was sovereignty for the states. And so even before the convention started, the states with the greater population, they were saying, we want to have voting by population. And so this gentleman, Delegate George Wythe from Virginia, an intellect at that time and a lawyer and constitutionalist and a professor, but anyway, what he did was he put a committee together. And at the committee, he defined what the convention would do, and one of the things that they agreed on in the committee was there would be one vote per state. It wouldn't be based on population. Well, in fact, because the convention agreed with that, the other delegates, that's how the voting went. But you see, they wanted right away to have by population. And so now with an Article 5 convention, no matter if it's single issue or multi-subject, the fact is that the delegates, if they're not bound, are going to define the voting process. They'll even define whether it's going to be by majority rule at the convention. They'll also define other aspects of the organization of the convention. And so if you have three broad subjects and you get 534 politically charged delegates, now all of a sudden you've got to define how those delegates are going to have to define each of those broad subjects and decide what they mean. And so you've got the left, the right, the middle, you've got the up, the down, and they're all saying, well, it's this, it's this. And so out of one subject, you may find that you have a dozen subsubjects. And then they have to be defined accordingly. I foresee that a convention of that type, whether it ever becomes mayhem or not, is going to take a year or more. And that's why the single issue amendment with a predefined delegate resolution is critical. And by the way, we're not advocating just any a single-issue convention. We're talking about the Countermand Amendment for very specific reasons, because it is a nonpartisan amendment, and I'd like to talk more about that as time permits. But at any rate, so when we are looking at the delegates, Representative DeGrasse and Hedke, as far as who they are not, in our opinion, they are not equivalent to the founders. That's not what they are. They are under Article 5, and and the legislatures are the only ones with the sovereign body. And so, to make sure that this convention is quick and safe and no mayhem, the best way to do it is to make sure that the delegates and the legislators retain their sovereign deliberative status and bind the delegates to a specific role that they are to have at the convention with a pre-approved text and a pre-approved delegate resolution by that particular legislature. Feel free to comment, sir. Did I lose you?
Well, certainly, this is Representative DeGrasse again. Certainly, I sure appreciate your thoughts concerning the fact that it could get out of hand with regards to having all these delegates. But the exciting thing is that Article 5 calls for one voice from the states. In essence, you have to have one decision maker, one voice that comes forth. Each state may have multiple delegates depending on how their legislature decides. But again, the legislature maintains control of selecting the delegates, empowering the delegates, removing delegates, perhaps even castrating delegates if they don't move properly, or whatever kind of a punishment they consider prudent and reasonable in their state. The point is the legislature still maintains control of whatever comes out of that larger, perhaps more open-ended convention. I do like the fact that you've got a single issue that you're moving forward on. I particularly, I think there's some things in the Countermand Amendment that are worthy of note. But whether we're talking about a balanced budget amendment, term limits on people, or whether we're talking about Mark Levin's freedom amendments, the exciting thing is the more we get grassroots talking about these issues, the more we get states moving forward on various amendments or proposals, the easier it will be for a convention of the states to actually begin moving forward specific recommendations. They may come out with a list of 5 or 6 potential amendments to the United States Constitution. The exciting thing, again, is that states are in control of that process. State legislators specifically are in control, and there's only one delegate allowed to speak on behalf of the states.
Yeah, can I jump in here real quick? We just the last couple minutes.
Go right ahead, sir.
One of the key aspects is, and we see this on a day-to-day basis, is our public right now has got a really very short attention span. It's a sad state of affairs, but it's a fact. If we have a single issue amendment where we're going in and we're doing this, like Charles said, within a week, then it's safe, it's efficient, it's timely, it's done, and the American public goes, oh, wow, great. But if this goes on for a year or 6 months even, and a lot of turmoil comes out of it, the longer that goes on, the more turmoil potential, the more the media gets involved, the worse it could have negative effects as far as future ones. And I know we're running out of time, so I'll get off.
This has been a very, very interesting discussion. I'm thoroughly enjoying it. Please, everyone, stay tuned, and we're going to do a short station break. We will be right back with the state legislators' roundtables with Representative Pete DeGrasse and Representative Dennis Hedke from Kansas. Stay tuned.
This is a station identification moment. You're listening to CPR Worldwide Media, a division of CPR Media Network, coming to you live right across the planet.
My name is Christopher Perkins, Captain, United States Marine Corps. I spent 9 years in the Marines and led a team in Al Ramadi, Iraq that risked its lives daily. Today, I'm a managing director at Citi, where I oversee a global team that provides safeguards for the $700 trillion derivatives industry.
Veterans, many of them have the right skills to be great bankers. And when they come in, they know how to make decisions, they know how to take risks, they know how to multitask. All of those things make them really great colleagues.
Just like we would go out onto the streets of Iraq, we would do an analysis of what risk we're taking and thinking about ways to mitigate it. It's no different here.
That makes them extremely valuable, and that's why we want them here helping our clients.
This industry requires our clients' trust. It requires a high degree of integrity. And so, just like the Marine Corps, your reputation is what it is, and your word is very important.
The design of the Ford Escape is clearly intended to grab your eye. Oh, and your foot. Huh, ain't that a kick? The Ford Escape with the foot-activated liftgate. Go open up something interesting. Go further.
Come on, Harry!
Dumb and Dumber 2 is the #1 movie in America.
Am I right? What?
Seriously, it's #1.
These guys are morons! I like her a lot.
Dumb and Dumber 2, rated PG-13. Now playing.
However dark the night, however dim our hopes, the light is always there within you.
His family gave him hope.
You fight harder than those other guys, and you win.
His spirit gave him strength.
We're gonna die out here.
We're not dying!
And in his darkest hour,
Who is the Olympic athlete?
his faith would not be broken.
Hello, Mother and Father. This will be the first time in 2 years that you'll have heard my voice. I wish you all a Merry Christmas. Your loving son, Louis.
On Christmas Day, experience the unbelievable true story of one man's journey home.
You can take it. You can make it. Just gotta believe you can.
If I can take it, I can make it.
Unbroken, rated PG-13, Christmas Day.
Read something recently worth thinking about. It's the soldier, not the campus organizer, who's given us freedom to demonstrate. It's the soldier, not the reporter, who's given us freedom of the press. It's the soldier, not the poet, who's given us freedom of speech. It's the soldier who serves under the flag, who defends the protesters' right to burn the flag. Isn't it time now to demonstrate that we support our troops? Were it not for the brave, there'd be no land of the free.
Fred Thompson's message was brought to you by citizensunited.org.
Welcome back, folks, and thank you for staying with us. This is Charles Kacprowicz. I am the Executive Director, and you're listening to the Executive Director for Citizen Initiatives and the Countermand Amendment. You're listening, of course, to the State Legislators Roundtable. We have two distinguished guests tonight. One is Representative Peter DeGrasse from Kansas, and the other is Representative Dennis Hedke from Kansas. And we were having a conversation that was for the purpose of helping define what an Article 5 convention is, and we were making good headway, and then unfortunately we ran out of time and we got to the bottom of the hour. So we're back now, and we'll look forward to continuing this conversation. Now, Representative Hedke, did you want to add anything else to this conversation?
Well, Charles, thank you very much for inviting us to the program. You and Mike and others have just been doing a fantastic job of trying to get the connection across the country made to, I think, invigorate our desire to bring the power that we need to have back in our state governments and to rein in this out-of-control situation that just does not seem to be listening to the people. We have good representatives throughout the Congress and in the Senate, but when it comes down to really, I think, fully acknowledging where the states are in their mindsets and where the states with large majorities in the governorships, large majorities in almost all houses of representatives and senators in our various states, something is getting lost in Washington, D.C. And this last week is just another perfect example of, the lack of connection and the lack of, I think, acceptance of the will of the people that voted very strongly in November to move in a very substantially different direction than we are moving even today. And so we have short time available to us to really start reorienting the ship. And I just hope that we as states will take every opportunity to fully expand and deal with the authority that we do have by Article 5. And so what my off the top of my head comment would be is I'm hopeful that we can find a way to be united across the entire spectrum of goals and objectives that relate to the Convention of States ideas or the Article 5 Convention ideas, and not have a situation develop where we can't somehow become fully organized and relatively one-minded with respect to the changes that we do have to introduce and work with. So, I think we've got wonderful, wonderful people working all around the edges here that have a strong desire to bring us back where we need to go and to steer this out of control legislative process in Washington, D.C. that is not being effective for our country. And, the immigration issue is right at the top of the list. My gosh, I can't imagine living in McAllen, Texas today. I have actually some family way back that did have residents in that area. But it's just a perfect example of how we must alter our path and allow the Ted Cruzes and so many other very, very good, intelligent men and women to really be acknowledged at that national level. And if the leaders of the pack at this moment, John Boehner, Mitch McConnell, and other people in the House and Senate leadership on the Republican side don't understand the magnitude of leverage that we have and don't want to deal with that, it's just beyond me how they can miss this opportunity to really become a lot more effective and a lot more, I'm going to say, aggressive against the powers that are sitting in the White House and that entire administrative overreach that's been defining us in the last number of years. The EPA and so many other agencies, the whole range of infringements that we've been experiencing, and so I'm entering my third term in the Kansas legislature, my fifth year. Pete's been in there longer than I have. He's a lot more experienced in developing the legislative activities that he's engaged in. I'm still learning, but I just feel that there's never been a better time for us to be very loud and very vocal with our perspectives and with where we want to go in the United States of America. And so I'm just not going to be, willing to stand on the sidelines and be silent and not raise the issues to the proper volume that we need to raise them to.
Amen.
Energy policy. Yeah. There are so many issues: energy, immigration, healthcare, all these very, very substantial areas of opportunity for us to position ourselves and really redirect the United States of America. And I'm just interested in doing everything I can to move that process forward. And the states' rights that we have need to be fully and completely implemented.
I'm you got
my support. What, Kelly?
I'm sort of curious. I heard one of the gentlemen say that the countermand was limited scope, I believe was the term. And I don't really understand that, because the countermand, if it had been in place, there never would have been an Obamacare, because I know 30 states would have stepped up and countermanded it, as well as the federal land grabs and the EPA and the all of the craziness, the Common Core. I know 30 states would stand up and say no, but the government is playing their games with, well, okay, Texas did not take Common Core, so they were punished, so to speak, by having money withheld from them to the education system. And that's, another way that the federal government is trying to control our states. But I mean, just imagine with that countermand and 30 states step up and say, you guys, guess what? The Constitution says you're only allowed 1 to 2% of control of any one single state, and that's for needful things, such as post roads or forts or what have you. You do not get to get control of 88% of Nevada or 67% of Alaska. Those lands are for the states and for the people and to make their lives better. The EPA comes and treats us like we are not going to take proper care of our land, of our state. That's ridiculous. Of course we're going to care for our state. We love our country. We love our states. We all have unique states, unique things about us, what makes each state, each people. But I'm just going on.
Right.
But as
That's okay.
The countermand, it seems to me, can address many, many issues.
And the only thing I'd like...
Charles, if you can... This is Sandy. If I want
Yes, Sandy.
Yeah, what Kelly was talking about, that hit me too. Because the countermand takes the place of 7 or 8 amendments.
It's like nullification on steroids.
Yeah, because you can take care of bad regulations, bad laws, executive orders, and on and on. So you can try to write 10 amendments that will not take the same effect. Now, the other point about that is that if you put out a lot of amendments that delegates write, then you're going to have certain problems with trying to get them ratified. Because the legislators are not going to be that familiar until things start coming out. And then if they don't like something and they don't want to ratify it, then ratification could take years. With the countermand and a single issue, if 34 states have done the application for the countermand, well, basically you only need to get 4 more states on to get it ratified. There's not going to be a lot of confusion. There's one amendment out there that needs to be worked on.
Well,
and the process should go very quickly.
We have 38 energy-producing states who are really struggling with the EPA rules and regulations. Those 38 states could be the ones to get this ratified. Once our state, and I do have faith in our state legislatures. I do. U.S. Congress scares me at this point. But I do still...
Let me interject here for a minute because I want the representatives to feel free to have some part in this second half hour. What I'm going to do after each of you have had a chance to make some further comments, I'm going to be talking about that the Article 5 allows multiple single-issue amendments at the same time. You're going to have 10 conventions going on at one time for different issues, and all of them could be for 7 days. And then I'm going to talk about the amendment itself to show just how broad it is and how it covers so much to protect states' rights, citizens' rights, and our personal liberties. Now, Representative DeGrasse, please feel free to comment and add to the conversation or concerns that you have, and we'll try to respond.
Well, certainly I salute you in all efforts to rein in federal spending and the overreach and the over-authority. I mean, when we take a look at the misabuse or the abuse of the Commerce Clause, General Welfare Clause, it's just horrendous. And then we take a look at the EPA, and there are just so many areas that the federal government is just trampling on states and their rights and the people. So I'm just thankful that the framers of the Constitution gave the people, through their representatives, a process through the Article 5 to gather together and to work out and to hammer out specific language. I think it's difficult sometimes in a single item type amendment, but I don't have any problem with it either. I mean, whatever we can do to find some unity, to hammer out a specific piece of language. Unfortunately, the Balanced Budget Book's been trying this for 40 years. And so I do like the countermand, that it's simpler, it's easier to comprehend, and so I certainly look forward to learning more, and anything we can do to move this and get people activated and realize that Article 5 is certainly a potential for our freedom and to secure our rights.
Well, even this spending bill, the states could step up and say, nope, countermand, we're not going to pay another $1 billion for the illegals when our veterans are dying on waiting lists. Sorry. 30 states, countermand, take it back to the drawing board, kids.
the fact is that if the state legislatures do not step up and exercise their sovereign authority in Article 5, I don't think we can restore this constitutional republic. I really think the nation has the talent.
I think that's exactly what the framers of the Constitution were concerned about, particularly George Mason, and so I totally agree with you, Charles. It's absolutely critical that the states become activated, and it's particularly important now because the red states seem to be in the majority. There's more red states than there are blue states. So with one vote per state...
Yes, sir, and there's also more legislatures that have gone red at the same time. A couple of quick comments, and then I'll ask Mr. Hedke to come in this thing. It is not a question of us or some other Article 5 group. We have a balanced budget amendment. We have a term limit amendment. We have one dealing with the right to life. We have another amendment dealing with school vouchers. I mean, we have 19 different amendments. We're not advancing any of them but one, the Countermand Amendment. And the reason we are is because it covers almost everything that we need to address from the state legislative standpoint. I'm going to just read it for the sake of the audience. That is the first two sections. In Section 1, the article restores state sovereignty. Oh, and before I do this, I want you to know we are being received very well by state legislatures all over the country. All of a sudden, at the beginning of the year, COS was thinking that they would have about 24 sponsored states by the end of this year. Well, they don't. We do. We've got 15. Why? Because there's something about this amendment that doesn't put COS off in the corner. It just says COS, there's another way of doing it, and I think we need to do that first. And that really is the point. I'm terribly concerned about the precedent that we will establish for future generations of legislators if we allow those delegates to go to that convention unbound and without a pre-approved text for an amendment, whether it's this one or someone else. That concerns me, because it'll make it very difficult for those future legislators to figure out how to use Article 5, and the politics will be all over the place. Here's how it reads. Section 1, the article restores state sovereignty in our constitutional republic by providing state legislatures countermand authority. Section 2, state legislatures in the several states shall have the authority to countermand and rescind any congressional statute, judicial decision, executive order, treaty, government agency's regulatory ruling, or any other government or non-government mandate, including excessive spending and credit, imposed on them when, in the opinion of 60% of the state legislatures, the law or ruling adversely affects their state's interest. When the countermand threshold has been reached, the law or ruling shall be immediately and automatically nullified and repealed. This countermand authority shall also apply to existing laws and rulings. Now, there is a national strategy committee that we have formed. We already have many, many legislators that are members. We also have citizens, and what's going to happen, and you guys would be more than welcome to become members of it, but the committee is responsible after this amendment has been ratified, first to help us get it ratified, but second, to help us identify the laws and the rulings that need to be addressed and countermanded. And once the committee decides that this law is one that we want to address and this one or this one, they then prioritize them, and then the legislators will tell us which ones they want citizen initiatives to work in the 50 states for the purpose of securing that countermand. What happens now is we become a facilitator, and then you, as a result of representing your legislature, you don't violate Article 1, Section 10, which is that prohibition against interstate agreements. So we think that that's the right way to do it. But when we're looking at this Countermand Amendment, literally just about everything that we have to deal with right now in this country, you guys can countermand if it is onerous to the states. You can actually stop it. You know, with this new budget that they came out with just recently, and we don't even have to talk about the particulars. All I know is this, that if 30 states said, wait a minute, Reed and Boehner, we are not approving your budget. We're countermanding it. Guess what? They have to first it's rescinded. They can't enforce it now. But at the same time, they have to decide if they want to rewrite that budget in a way more amenable to the states, or if they want to totally abandon it and give some other alternative that the states will accept. Remember, the state legislatures created the federal government. The federal government did not create the state legislatures. And the state legislatures never surrendered their sovereign authority. Never. And it was passed down through Article 5 with three qualifiers. One, that the Constitution would remain supreme. Two, that it would be perpetual. And three, that it would be for proposing amendments, not for rewriting the Constitution. Anyway, some thoughts on that, if you would, please. Mr. Hedke?
I'm just trying to bring my thoughts together, Charles. We've covered a lot of ground here tonight. I do like the simplicity of the Countermand Amendment. I don't necessarily agree with every word in it. I think there are some opportunities for improvement to try to advance the idea. But I think what my hope is that whatever it takes for us soon, not later, sooner rather than later, I'm hopeful we can come together and bring these opportunities to the House floors, the Senate floors across America, expand beyond that 15-state reach that you've got identified so far, and really, while the iron is hot, really start moving this thing down the track. We're going to have a brand new federal institution in the House and the Senate that has an opportunity to hear from us. And we do have, I believe, fully the right to direct their paths and to strongly suggest to them that where they have not honored the state's desires and the wishes from the election and everything that we've just seen, that there's never been a better time to stand up and to be very succinct, have very well-defined objectives that we can put out on the table, and let them understand that the immigration conditions that you just passed are not acceptable, and that the budget conditions you just passed are not acceptable.
Yes.
And so whatever it takes to get us to a place where we can exert our authority and our leverage, that's what I'm interested in trying to accomplish.
If I may,
please.
Yeah, Charles. Some things that just recently happened. This just came out, I believe, today. President Obama did another one of his infamous "I've got a pen and phone" executive orders, and he basically put a screeching halt by executive order to land use here in Alaska in Bristol Bay, which adds to what the EPA did by coming in with bad science, with preconceived notions, and basically a preconceived way they were going to do it. And it didn't matter what we had to say. But what he did was basically shut down the largest gold and copper mine in the world because of this executive order. This counterman could handle that. And if I may also, the Senator Murkowski on the floor of the House on December 10th, this was on the National Defense Authorization Act, somehow or another they snuck in some land issues on this. And she said, and I quote, it's just a short quote, "Whether it is a small land conveyance, whether it is a creation of a wilderness area that has come about through a great deal of compromise and collaboration, or whether it is a conveyance that will allow for economic opportunity through mineral development, timber harvest, or grazing opportunities, I think it does speak to just the diversity of what we're dealing with. With so many of our public lands and the reality that they're different all over, very different in Alaska than from what my friend from New Mexico experiences. The similarity that we had the ability to do it, the similarity that we have is, and this is the key point, similarity that we have is that we don't have the ability to do it on our own. Speaking of the states, the states have come to the federal government. So what will happen is whether you're in New Mexico or whether you're in Alaska or points in between, you have local consensus emerge around an issue. They bring it to the state, and the state works with us at the federal level. members of the House, members of the Senate, and we continue to work this process, and is usually a very collaborative process. That, as for an Alaskan, was a slap in the face by my senator that said that our state does not know how to handle our lands. And that's the arrogance that we're dealing with in D.C. And they get in there and they drink the Kool-Aid, and they've been there too long, and she becomes Princess Murkowski, and because Daddy appointed her to begin with, it is just a continuation of bad policy. And this Countermand Amendment can get our lands back. And we get our lands back, we get our resources back. When we get our resources back, we get jobs, and our people's lives are so much better and our children's and our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren will have it better and better and better and better from each generation. And I'll leave it at that.
Well,
Charles, if I could interject.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, this is Representative Pete DeGraff again. Again, I really do encourage the listeners to take a strong look at the Countermand Amendment. It is germane to the Convention of the States. Our founding fathers were very familiar with the convention process. They trusted the state ratification process. We have Article 5 in the Constitution. I think it's time for Americans to stand up and demand that we use this process.
I agree.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, bravo.
And we are running out of time. We have got to get figured out what it's going to take to the process. The process is what we need to get this hammered out. And as for me, just being a regular person, I want to make sure that my state legislatures know exactly what those delegates are there at the convention to discuss. In other words, I want you guys to pre-approve what they're there to do. I want their work sat in front of them on the table when they step into that chamber to begin their work. I want you guys to know what they're there to do exactly. And 34 states applying for the Countermand Amendment is going to help the United States Congress understand that we are once again United States. We need the countermand. They're not going to like it, and we don't need their permission, and we don't need for them to like it. We don't need to wait for an invitation to have our convention. If we want our Countermand Amendment Convention through Article 5, then we don't need their permission. It was set up that way so that we can go ahead and go around Congress, go around the judges, go around the executive branch, because they are not going by the will of the people anyway. And I do still have faith.
I've got to interject, Kelly, because these two gentlemen need to have a little bit more say.
Yes.
By 2016, we are hoping to have this ratified. Not us, but the state legislatures. Citizen Initiative is simply the facilitator. It's independent of any other effort that's going for Article 5. We're not trying to compete with any of them. We have a structure, and we have a way to enforce the provisions in the amendment by allowing the legislatures to prosecute intentional violators if the federal government won't. And they have 90 days in which to make that prosecutorial action. So the point is, this is a very unique approach, and it is not for the purpose of saying, COS, you're no good, or this one's no good. It's for the purpose of making sure that this particular amendment is received well by the legislature so we can get this thing ratified. And if we can get it ratified early enough, by 2016, the states can be rescinding laws. That's really the key. Okay, Senator DeGrasse, please share your comments for the few minutes we have left.
Let's hold this thought real quick. Let's go ahead and go do our station break real quick. We will be right back with the State Legislator Roundtable. Thank you. Stay tuned.
This is a station identification moment. You're listening to CPR Worldwide Media, a division of CPR Media Network, coming to you live right across the planet.
Citigold is an account from a global bank with over 200 years experience, offering international banking expertise across over 100 markets. Your dedicated investment consultant adds a unique personal touch to your banking experience, Complimentary lifestyle offers like Marhaba service and free global money transfers help you save on time and money. At the core of Citigold is your dedicated relationship manager, personally looking after your financial needs. Be it lifestyle privileges like golf, lounge access across the Middle East, or worldwide privileges, Citigold provides you with a rewarding experience. One card is all you need for all your Citibank accounts. As a Citigold client, you benefit from our international expertise and global reach. Citigold is more than an account. It's a personal banking service offering exceptional privileges, customer service and recognition worldwide. So wherever you are, Citigold will be with you.
The design of the Ford Escape is clearly intended to grab your eye. And your foot. Huh, ain't that a kick? The Ford Escape with the foot-activated liftgate. Go open up something interesting. Go further.
Come on, Harry!
Dumb and Dumber 2 is the #1 movie in America.
Am I right? What?
Seriously, it's #1.
These guys are morons! I like her a lot.
Dumb and Dumber 2, rated PG-13, now playing.
However dark the night, however dim our hopes, the light is always there within you.
His family gave him hope.
You fight harder than those other guys, and you win.
His spirit gave him strength.
We're gonna die out here.
We're not dying!
And in his darkest hour,
Who is the Olympic athlete?
his faith would not be broken.
Hello, Mother and Father. This will be the first time in 2 years that you'll have heard my voice. I wish you all a Merry Christmas. Your loving son, Louis.
On Christmas Day, experience the unbelievable true story of one man's journey home.
You can take it. You can make it. Just gotta believe you can.
If I can take it, I can make it.
Unbroken, rated PG-13, Christmas Day.
Read something recently worth thinking about. It's the soldier, not the campus organizer, who's given us freedom to demonstrate. It's the soldier, not the reporter, who's given us freedom of the press. It's the soldier, not the poet, who's given us freedom of speech. It's the soldier who serves under the flag, who defends the protesters' right to burn the flag. Isn't it time now to demonstrate that we support our troops? Were it not for the brave, there'd be no land of the free.
Fred Thompson's message was brought to you by citizensunited.org.
Welcome back, folks. This is the State Legislators Roundtable. I am Charles Kacprowicz, Executive Director for Citizen Initiatives and the Countermand Amendment. We've had a very good discussion with Representative DeGrasse and also Representative Hetke from Kansas. And we've had a Representative Mast, Peggy Mast, who has been also monitoring the call from Kansas. So we've had some good representation from Kansas. I want to thank you for continuing with us. And now we're going to continue with our conversation and look into aspects of how the Countermand Amendment can help Kansas. I want everyone to know, first of all, I've been working in amending the Constitution for 40 years now. And I've been doing it either through Congress or now through state legislatures. And I might be, the longest living Article 5 advocate in the country, for all I know. I've got a new book called Countermand Amendment, the missing piece in the Article 5 puzzle. Anyone in the audience that would like to order a book, a copy of that book, go to countermands.us and $20 plus $5 for shipping. Also, if you want to sponsor a book that we are sending to 7,500 state legislators free of charge, you can do so. Click the donate button and we will divide it by 25 and send out the appropriate number of books to those legislators in your state and in surrounding states so that they too will have firsthand the information that we're trying to get across the nation to our state legislatures. Now, Senator DeGrasse, I asked you to make a comment, and then we ran out of time. So I'm going to ask you to come in and just share with us what's on your mind, and then I'll give Mr. Hedke one more chance to speak, and then we'll have to go on to North Carolina.
Well, certainly, Charles, I sure appreciate your work, your passion, and your heart, and I salute your efforts and commend you for trying to rein in the federal government. I really like the Countermand Amendment in many ways, particularly like its ongoing nature. And so whatever we can do to move forward, to see us finding some kind of a convention of states, and whether this be a specific item that we can get together on, I just encourage citizens to start pushing their legislators to become interested in and familiar with the Article 5 process that our founding fathers trusted in, were familiar with, and entrusted into our care. So again, I commend you, and I'll be signing off at this point.
Thank you, sir, and we'll look forward to getting back to you. I know Michael Coons will be connecting with you, both for a thank you for joining us, and also for just commenting on some of the direction that we may be able to go in together. How about you, Representative Hedke? Any final comments you'd like to make?
Well, I certainly appreciate your efforts to attempt to pull us together, and you've done a tremendous job, Charles, and your staff and supporters there to bring us to this moment. I would concur with Representative DeGrasse that we in the state of Kansas are interested in whatever process we can develop that will get us down the track of reining in the federal government and providing the states the appropriate level of influence on that federal process. And that's something that we've not taken advantage of. We need to change that picture as soon as we can. So thank you very, very much.
Well, thank you, and I'm honored to have both you and DeGrasse with us. I have come over this year. I have come to really, really enjoy the legislators I have met. I see you guys more as statesmen than I do politicians, because I don't know that I've met any of you from any of the states. And we've had probably, I don't know, we might be getting closer to 75 or 80 legislators around this program already. The fact is, I have not met one who I would say is not in some way a statesman, trying to find solutions for their state and for the nation. So I thank you both for what you're doing and even participating with us on this call tonight. So we give you praise for that.
Well, you're most welcome, and we thank you.
Good night, gentlemen.
Now, was that Peggy Mast? Did you want to say something, Representative Mast?
I think she may be on the road. Do we have Representative Brody with us?
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, there we go.
Yes, there we go. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, folks in the audience, I want you to know that I have a gentleman who is going to be in this next hour from North Carolina. He is a distinguished and honorable Representative Mark Brody. He has an incredible history. He's been on many, many standing and select committees, agriculture, appropriations, subcommittees for the general government. He's the vice chairman of that appropriations committee, commerce and job development subcommittee on energy and emerging markets, government committee, health and human services, regulatory reform and subcommittee. I mean, it just goes on. I don't know how this, Mark, I don't know how you find time to go to bed at night. I mean, you guys are really, and then on top of it, I'm looking here, I counted 139 sponsored bills that you have. You really are a worker. So I want to first thank you for coming on the program tonight. I want to ask you to feel free to share whatever it is that is important to you, and as it might relate to North Carolina and federal encroachment on states' rights. And then we'll have a conversation going back and forth. Our audience is growing. We might have well over 100,000 people this week who will be listening to this program. So, and it could even be more than that, based on what I've been told by the radio station. So, Representative Brody, thank you for coming on, and feel free to share as you'd like to, and we'll be glad to hear what's on your mind.
All right. I thank you very much, Charles, and I was very pleased to hear some of my counterpart legislators in the other part of the county. I bring greetings from the south central rolling hills of North Carolina, just south of the city of Charlotte. It's a pretty rural area. And what I wanted, my concern when you first brought this to my attention, which was a while ago, I really lit up to it. And we know what the problem is, that we're losing control of our states and our nation. And very interesting, we're at least in my opinion, we're entering a phase called post-constitutionalism, and meaning that we're reinterpreting the original document. We're allowing the federal government to reinterpret the original document using the very words that are in the document, but giving them different meanings. And we're losing control. And two aspects of it that are real glaring are in North Carolina, like all states, we struggle with a budget, but the part that we struggle with only represents, in the case of North Carolina, 2/5 of the amount of money we spend. And where's that coming from? The difference is it's coming from the federal government, which means that the federal government has control, 3/5 control of everything we do in North Carolina. And as you named some of these committees that I was on, a very frustrating part, being a state legislature, of being on these committees is, if you want to propose something, you will very often hear, I'm sorry, we can't do that because federal rules prohibit that. And we hear it over and over, from regulatory reform to a lot of HHS or Health and Human Services, Medicaid, those things. Federal government has so much control of the states. And ironically, I say, one of the things that I guess I was hoping that the Countermand Amendment would eventually address, if and when it does pass and get ratified, is where in our Constitution does the federal government have the authority to tax us for the sole purpose of giving it back to us with conditions? I mean, that in itself is almost a tyranny in itself, because you're giving so much control over the federal government who taxes us so they can add more control. And the other is an important part, which you mentioned previously on your show about the same-sex marriage ruling. We are in a spiral of involuntary moral decline in this country. Involuntary. Meaning that my district in particular voted 70 to 75% in favor of the constitutional ban on same-sex marriage, or what we call the marriage amendment, which identify what is marriage, which is between one man and one woman at one time.
Yes.
But the state in general overall was over 60%, so my district was overwhelmingly supporting that amendment. But we are now being involuntary set in motion. Some our moral fabric is being challenged by the federal courts, and it's equally frustrating that the federal courts have taken so much control. Now, I'll continue going on here if you want. You can jump in there if you want, but it's interesting. Let's ask ourselves a real important question: is if the Supreme Court can rule a law made by Congress, duly made by Congress, is unconstitutional, and if the Supreme Court can rule an act of the President is unconstitutional, who rules a decision of the Supreme Court unconstitutional? Who does that?
Right now, no, that's right. And not only that question, Representative Brody, but there up until now, and I'm referring to the Countermand Amendment, up until now, no one has understood how to control the Supreme Court. You know, when the Supreme Court makes an edict like Roe versus Wade, for an example, that decision, forgetting about the abortion side of it, which I am very pro-life, but the fact that when they made that decision based on the supremacy clause of the United States Constitution, everybody assumed that they amended the U.S. Constitution without ratification by the states. And they did it on flawed thinking because of the privacy issues that were in Amendment 9. But the point that I'm making is that's the power of the Supreme Court. And the only entity that we have left in America that can counter that is the state legislatures and the Article 5 process. And with that, the Supreme Court now has, when they make a decision, if the Countermand Amendment is in place, and it's been ratified, now the Supreme Court's going to think twice before they make a sweeping decision that kills 50 million of our children, or might kill at that point 50 million. You see, they'll sit back and they'll say, wait a minute, 30 states could rescind our decision. We better be careful.
Right. And here's a very important aspect about the Countermand amendments that's different from a lot of the efforts out there to also have an Article 5 convention dealing with amendments. The idea that you change the government by amendments has some flaws in it because the Supreme Court ultimately interprets the amendment. And so if you try to make an amendment to do something, can you imagine the absurdity of having an amendment requiring the Supreme Court to follow the Constitution? But it's almost that absurd. But the Countermand Amendment is different because the Countermand Amendment says that we can go and say we can reverse decisions. An amendment doesn't reverse decisions; it sets up the stage in which the court can work to decide something. But the Countermand Amendment can report about this.
Representative Brody, you're speaking to the choir here, and boy, do I like to hear it. The fact is, you're absolutely correct. You see the wisdom and the power of this amendment. And from our vantage point, I'm talking about from citizen initiatives now, we're not the power. We're not the people who are actually going to make things happen. It's the state legislatures that are going to have the authority with this amendment. And by the legislators learning how to use it, what's going to happen, the federal government is going to think twice with everything they do. It's not like they're going to be put out of business because they do. To be effectively countermanded, you need 30 states. But at the same time, if the EPA is going to write a ruling that's going to affect 12 states or something, all of a sudden they're going to say, hey, we better write this so it's amenable to the states because it can be rescinded. Or the Congress is going to write a law and they'll sit back and they'll say, let's think twice about this rather than ramming it down the throat of the states, because the states now have the authority to say, hey, you went too far. We're rescinding your decision and nullifying it. So go ahead.
You're right. That's the power of the Countermand Amendment versus any other group that's trying to just push a Article 5 convention so they can pass some amendments. I mean, there are probably some amendments out there that are really good, but you've got to be careful that even though you set an amendment, the Supreme Court can change it. Look at what's happened to the 14th Amendment. I mean, I've read the history on the 14th Amendment, and it says nothing about the marriage or anything like that, which virtually every major constitutional decision coming from the Supreme Court has the basis in the 14th Amendment. But that was never the case, but they reinterpreted that. The other thing is they interpret things like the separation of church and state. Now, everybody who pays any attention to this issue knows where that's coming from Thomas Jefferson, and they know the context of it. And it has nothing to do with keeping religion out of the public sphere. It has keeping the public sphere out of religion. But everybody knows that, but yet they bring that to such a level of constitutional level, and I guess we've done it for so many years. It's that old adage that you keep on telling a lie over and over again, and then you start to believe it. Well, we've started to believe in this country that, number one, the Supreme Court is the ultimate arbiter, which isn't the case by the Constitution. But and whatever they say is correct, and it's not. And they are no more human than anybody else. It was interesting if you'd read the federal court ruling, once again declaring unconstitutional ban against gay marriage from Arkansas and Mississippi, and the judge said, although we cherish our traditional values, constitutional wisdom must take precedent. And I thought to myself, where you mean to tell me that you somehow gleaned constitutional wisdom someplace in this document that says that we can go against the culture that we've had in this country for 300 some years, as well as the culture of most civilizations since the beginning of time. And we can change that because somehow you have constitutional wisdom. That's absolutely absurd. But that's federal in that. Yeah, we need. That's why we need to be able to. Yeah.
Can I add to this conversation a little bit?
Sure.
We've had the same thing happen up here in Alaska, where we've got a Ninth Circuit judge that turned around and said that 75% of the people of the state of Alaska who voted in a general election for a constitutional amendment to the state of Alaska's constitution, the marriage is between one man and one woman, period, end of conversation, all of a sudden made this thing into a gay rights, bashing and everything else. Section 16 of the Alaskan Constitution, the governor shall be responsible for the faithful execution of the laws. He may, by appropriate court action or proceeding brought in the name of the state, enforce compliance with any constitutional or legislative mandate or restrain violation of any constitutional or legislative power or duty or right by any officer, department, or agency of the state or any of its political subdivisions. I see that as the fact that, and this is not just the state of Alaska. I'm sure that state constitutions across the United States have got similar language. The problem is that we don't have our governor, when that happened, could have just easily turned around and said to that federal judge, excuse me, but as the governor, as the executor, and as the protector of our state constitution, we are not going to follow this. But the problem is we don't have governors that are willing to put their neck out in that case. The beauty of the Countermand Amendment is that when you take the many numbers of people that in the state legislatures, where some states got several hundred, where Alaska, I think I don't even know if we have 150 in both House and Senate, maybe even 100. But those people then turn around and debate and discuss and then come up with a resolution that tells that judge, no, we're not doing this. We're countermanding that. And then the other states, when they see Alaska do it, you guys, North Carolina says, yeah, we're right with you. We're doing it too. And Michigan does it, and Oregon does it, and all these other states that have had these judges coming down from on high and legislating from the bench, then they turn around and say, okay, we got 30 countermands here. You're done. It's that is not going to happen. That is not going to stand, and it's now repealed. But then that actually gives the governors that gives you, the state legislatures, the ability to back up your governors and maybe put some backbone in some of those governors that just need that little bit of a push, and it'll be even easier the next time.
Well, yeah, and plus one state nullifies, and then the federal government comes back with the lawsuits and more time and more money and blah, 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 where 30 states come in and they nullify or countermand, and that's it. There's no arguing. I mean, it's a wonderful way to modify our federal government, I believe. It's a great tool.
Representative Brody, you go ahead and share what you're thinking right now.
Well, I agree with the other folks that were just speaking. I think having the state legislature, the House and Senate, I guess almost all the states have a House and Senate, control. You do that without the consent of the governor, and the governor, if they don't want to, politically don't want to touch it, or even if you have a governor that's maybe opposed to what you're doing, they really don't have any say. So,
exactly.
So the legislature takes over. And it also, I don't know how it is in other states, but the state legislator, at least in my opinion, was viewed by the founders as the most important policy level elected official in the country, because if you hold steady to the fact that the Constitution was given limited powers to Congress, that means everything else was given to the states. So we have to, as a state legislator, we're supposed to take care of everything else. And gradually the federal government has been taking that over. So this will put back the authority of the state legislator, and also people may start paying more attention to what the people that they start to elect.
And Representative Brody, you just hit on something that, this is Mike out of Alaska. My representative, Shelley Hughes, when she first became a representative, she had to go through some history on and things, about learning how to be a legislator. And she she learned and passed this on to me that one of the in the 1800s all the way up until the early 1900s, when things really started sadly changing, the most coveted political office for a person to hold was a state senator. It was to be a state legislature was the most coveted. Those guys in Washington, D.C., they just kind of like, okay, those guys there, and nobody really wanted to go to D.C., and nobody really wanted, they weren't held in high esteem. You guys were the ones that were held in high esteem, and we're taking that back with this. And I think the whole Article 5 movement in and of itself is gearing towards that, of getting back to that state sovereignty and getting to that point that people, we're down to the last couple minutes, but one of the things that I hear often, I'm sure you do too, is people don't want to run for public office. They don't want to be, it's too much of a bother, or any number. I can't really get anything done. There's too much division. But that's a lot of it at the federal level.
I have to come in now because of the station break coming up. I want to put a plug in for two shows on CPR worldwidemedia.com. One is the Right Side Patriots show with Craig and Diane, that is Craig Andreessen and Diane Sorry. And the other is the Whiskey Tango Foxtrot show. And the Whiskey Tango Foxtrot show is on from 7 until 9, Monday through Thursdays. And I don't have the schedule for the Right Side Patriots, but they are on, I believe, every day in the evening. And you've come to the program guide that they have at CPRworldwidemedia.com and learn about these two shows. V. Wright and Jose Estevez from the Whiskey Tango Foxtrot show have a powerful, penetrating talk show that focuses on bringing to you the news that the media won't talk about, with hard-hitting facts and events that will help you to see who we really are as Americans, where we came from, and where we are going. They are constitutionalists who work tirelessly to preserve our constitutional heritage, states' rights, and personal freedoms. Now, folks, I know we're going to go to break in a few moments. Kelly will have to break in here to tell me when. But the audience, I want you to hear what I'm going to share now with Representative Brody on the line. The Countermand Amendment can address issues that are of interest to any side of the political spectrum. Are you interested in protecting First Amendment rights, that is free speech? It's there for you. Are you interested in protecting freedom of religion? It's there for you. Are you interested in petitioning your government and protecting it? It's there for you. And here are some ideas that you might want to consider when you look at the Countermand Amendment. Go to countermands.us and learn what we are doing. You can be countermanding laws that are violations of our constitutional rights with enumerated rights, unenumerated rights in the 9th and 10th Amendment. Here's a way in which nullification has teeth. Once 30 states act in the form of countermanding, which is a kind of nullification, that law or ruling is rescinded. How about federal control of state lands? How about the congressional budget, the deficits, the debt? How about taxation? How about Federal Reserve policies, non-government mandates? Even the Federal Reserve would be subject to the will of the states with this program. Healthcare, energy, mining, local education, social issues, and much, much more. Please understand that the Countermand Amendment through state legislatures gives America a chance to restore our constitutional republic so that the unique characteristics of our state and groups and communities within those states can be preserved. So, Representative Brody, you feel free to just share what's on your mind.
Well, that's right, Charles. The Countermand Amendment, it can rein in our federal government. We do need to go on a quick station break. Everyone, please stay tuned to the State Legislators Roundtable with Representative Brody. We'll be right back.
This is a station identification moment. You're listening to CPR Worldwide Media, a division of CPR Media Network, coming to you live right across the planet.
Citigold is an account from a global bank with over 200 years experience, offering international banking expertise across over 100 markets. Your dedicated investment consultant adds a unique personal touch to your banking experience. Complimentary lifestyle offers like Marhaba service and free global money transfers help you save on time and money. At the core of Citigold is your dedicated relationship manager, personally looking after your financial needs. Be it lifestyle privileges like golf, lounge access across the Middle East, or worldwide privileges, Citigold provides you with a rewarding experience. One card is all you need for all your Citibank accounts. As a Citigold client, you benefit from our international expertise and global reach. Citigold is more than an account. It's a personal banking service offering exceptional privileges, customer service and recognition worldwide. So wherever you are, Citigold will be with you.
The design of the Ford Escape is clearly intended to grab your eye. And your foot. Huh, ain't that a kick? The Ford Escape with the foot-activated liftgate. Go open up something interesting. Go further.
Come on, Harry!
Dumb and Dumber 2 is the #1 movie in America.
Am I right? What?
Seriously, it's #1.
These guys are morons! I like her a lot.
Dumb and Dumber 2, rated PG-13, now playing.
However dark the night, however dim our hopes, the light is always there within you.
His family gave him hope.
You fight harder than those other guys, and you win.
His spirit gave him strength.
We're gonna die out here. We're not dying!
And in his darkest hour,
Who is the Olympic athlete?
his faith would not be broken.
Hello, Mother and Father. This will be the first time in 2 years that you'll have heard my voice. I wish you all a Merry Christmas. Your loving son, Louis.
On Christmas Day, experience the unbelievable true story of one man's journey home.
You can take it. You can make it. Just gotta believe you can.
If I can take it, I can make it.
Unbroken, rated PG-13, Christmas Day.
Read something recently worth thinking about. It's the soldier, not the campus organizer, who's given us freedom to demonstrate. It's the soldier, not the reporter, who's given us freedom of the press. It's the soldier, not the poet, who's given us freedom of speech. It's the soldier who serves under the flag, who defends the protesters' right to burn the flag. Isn't it time now to demonstrate that we support our troops? Were it not for the brave, there'd be no land of the free.
Fred Thompson's message was brought to you by citizensunited.org.
Welcome back, folks. This is the State Legislators Roundtable. I am Charles Kacprowicz, Executive Director for Citizen Initiatives and the Countermand Amendment. We have the Honorable Representative Mark Brody from North Carolina in our show this evening, and we'll be continuing our discussions with him in a very quick moment. I want to add a few things, though, to the conversation. First of all, we have to remind ourselves that the federal government did not create the state legislatures. The state legislatures created the federal government. And why that's important is because ever since the federal government became an entity with three branches, they have been constantly trying to push the legislators back. Now, the mistake that has been made by legislators is that they have not understood properly. They've bought into many of the deceptive lies that have been coming down on the other side, but they have not understood that they have sovereign authority passed down to them by the founders and the state legislators in 1787 through Article 5. But they have three limiting factors. One, they've agreed that they would make sure that the Constitution is supreme. Two, that it was to be perpetual for every generation. And three, that under Article 5, the legislatures can actually push the federal government back, modify its conduct through proposing amendments. And when you consider the sovereign aspects of what the state legislatures have today, our position with citizen initiatives is simply this. They must not abdicate their sovereignty. They must not let delegates decide who they are. They must not let Congress decide who they are, or the Supreme Court, or the federal government, the executive branch, or even the governor of their states. The federal government is the subject of their authority. They are not the master of the state legislatures. That's what Article 5 does. Now, why did we put 30 states, 60%? Because the federal government has a legitimate role. And we don't want to create an oligarchy of states that creates anarchy. So when 30 states out of 50 say, hey, federal government, you went too far, there's a mandate there and a sufficient percentage that is in favor of rescinding that law that can be respected by all 50 states. And since it's a nonpartisan amendment, meaning that no matter what political side of the equation you are on, you can use it for the purposes that you think are important. It is an amendment that the states need because they need to protect their states' rights. They need to protect their authority, and they need to have a tool that will allow them to exercise that authority in a way that will control the encroachments by the federal government on the states. Representative Brody, why don't you just weigh in here and tell us what else is on your mind?
All right. Charles, let me give you just a vision of how things would change when the Countermand Amendment gets ratified. And it's very important for the citizens of the states, and it'll change the whole dynamic of how the citizens react with their policy-making elected officials. And me as a state legislator, I don't get much access to my member of Congress, although I probably get a little bit more than the average citizen, but not much more. So if I have some legislation that I have in mind, I can call up my member of Congress, and I probably have to email them and go through whatever procedure, but I'll generally see them someplace, and I can get that in front of them, and they'll give me the answer, okay, or whatever they're going to do. But imagine this, that if the Countermand Amendment existed, the average citizen could come to me and all my counterparts and say, look, I have an idea, or I oppose this. What can you do about it? And they know where I live because districts are relatively small. They know where I shop, where I go to the movies, and all this. So they have access to me on a lot more basis than they would their member of Congress. But what they say will have an effect on what we do, because then we, as a legislature, have a say in how we approach whatever issue it is. So it changes the complete vision and the importance of a state legislator, as well as it gives the citizen a face a person that they can see and they see on a regular basis instead of their member of Congress who they may see on TV once in a while. So it has a major effect. Yeah.
Absolutely, Representative Brody. When you think about how sovereignty flows, you have the sovereign citizen who, through the electoral process, elects the legislator, who then has, through the legislature, sovereign authority to amend the Constitution for the purpose of addressing egregious wrongs suffered by the people that the federal government won't address. That's the way the sovereignty is supposed to work. And so you reflect the will of your district, but the citizen has a chance now with this Countermand Amendment, as you have very adequately said, to influence the kind of decisions that should be, issues that should be countermanded. That's a wonderful perspective that you've added here.
And I love the word vision, because we do. We need our vision. We need our imagination to be sparked again and bring things back to the way that they should be.
Yes, thank you, Kelly. Let me just give a quick review of the areas that can be addressed as a result of the ratification of the Countermand Amendment. And folks, I want you to know out there in the audience that we're going to get this thing done. The state legislators are responsible.
If we had that countermand, Charles, Obamacare never would have made it. Never. Well, not in a million years.
The fact is that we have legislators now who are realizing that they have sovereignty in Article 5 and haven't known how to use it in the past. And they've been bombarded by so many different groups telling them that you shouldn't have an Article 5 convention because you can only have a constitutional convention, which is nuts. That's crazy. It's for proposing amendments. It specifically says so. And the state legislatures, even they have restricted themselves to just proposing amendments. But the fact is that it can be used in many areas. Here are just a few of them. Environmental Protection Agency. Are you concerned about some issues that they have created? Sue and settle rulings. That is, a new technique has developed whereby groups in the environmental area, they create an issue, usually a false issue, and then they create a debate over it, and then they create a lawsuit. And then the EPA responds to the lawsuit, and guess what? They make a decision that puts the lawsuit aside so that the environmental group gets what they want. And so as a result, they settle the ruling, but it was never settled in court. It's a new strategy. It's going on as we speak. Carbon emissions rulings, water use rulings, land use rulings, forestry rulings. How about the Bureau of Land Management, land use rulings and tax rulings? Remember in Nevada, where 88% of the land in Nevada is controlled by the federal government? And now I don't want to weigh in on the legalities of what happened at the Bundy Ranch. I just want to mention this. Bundy's got a bunch of cattle, and he's on federal land, should be Nevada land. And the federal government says, we want you to pay taxes on it. And so because he refused to do so, the BLM comes in with their guns and their various threats and stands up against Bundy. And there are some militia people who come in, didn't even bring guns, the purpose for which is just to stand against them, even though there were guns pointed at them. So the point is that Bundy stands strong. That's nullification. But guess what? BLM can come back in 2 weeks or next week or tomorrow and do it all over again. But if that law that allowed BLM to do that in the first place had been countermanded and rescinded, there's no chance that the BLM could come back in a second time or a third time. The issue is settled. And what happens in that situation, the state legislatures will have defined an unenumerated right that they alone say is theirs, and they don't want the federal government in that area. So that's how you get Amendment 10 to be properly used by the federal government, by the states rather, so that federal encroachment on their rights can be defined and then rescinded, and now it is no longer a nullification, it is a rescission that in fact prevents the federal government from repeating that particular problem. So that's just another Department of Interior. How about congressional statutes, Supreme Court decisions, executive orders? There are executive orders today that we're going nuts with these things. And now someone reported just the other day, I think it was on Fox News, that it's not 5 million who are going to be positively affected by this executive order making illegals legal. It's 20 million because, and I don't recall the details, but the fact is that it's more than 5 million. Now, how is it that one man can make a decision for everybody else? We want legal immigration. We don't want illegal immigration. And how about other implications? Unfunded liabilities. The states are just swimming and drowning in unfunded liabilities, and this is a way to address them. Okay, Representative Brody, you feel free to weigh in here and share what's on your mind.
Well, I think as a state legislature now I'm responsible for the general welfare, and I don't want that term to be overexpanded like it has been, but of the citizens of North Carolina, and that's fair enough. And my concern is that unfunded mandates or partially funded mandates or contracts that the state enters into that are promised, that where the federal government promises to play this, but then the federal government has the option to decrease that funding later on and throw it onto you. Those are the things that are concerning. When I have to do, I get involved in regulatory reform, and it's a very difficult job to do because if I would like to address a certain regulation, I'm bumping against federal rules. And I've recently had one with our Department of Agriculture, because my district is predominantly agriculture, that said, well, we have to do this because the federal Food and Drug Administration says this is what we have to do. And I said, well, aren't we a sovereign state? Why do we have to follow that? Well, we get a lot of money. So those are things that affect us. And, North Carolina just went through 2 years ago we decided not to expand the Medicaid program. Well, now that the federal government is bringing us back again, there are some in the legislature that say, well, maybe we should because it's free money. It's free money. But reality is it's free money for the first 3 years. Then after that, the state has to take over. And there's no promise of how much the federal government's going to kick in. So it has something to potentially not bankrupt us, but send our tax rates real high. So there's a lot of practical problems that the federal government causes that need to be addressed and could be addressed with the Countermand Amendment. Are you still there?
Charles?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. I didn't know if I lost you or not.
No.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay.
I think that what you said, Representative Brody, is right on target. The fact is that when the amendment is completely ratified, and I hope that will be in 2016, when that happens, what will happen? What the states will be doing is learning how to use it, and that means that they'll be learning how to find out what issues they can agree on and then countermand them. And there'll be a lot of give and offset there, but the fact is it'll be a tool that they will recognize to protect their state's rights, because we are a republic. And I believe that if the state legislatures abandon this role of protecting our constitutional republic, we will lose this Constitution. It will no longer be a republic. It'll be whatever the federal government says. That has to be stopped. And so what you are saying is absolutely on target. Now, Sandy, did you have something you wanted to add to this conversation? That's our national coordinator, Representative Brody. Sandy?
Well, I'm so glad that Representative Brody really understands the countermand. And
yes, me too. Me too.
Because I know that I have been fighting this ever since I started with the Tea Party in 2009. And to me, I have looked at so many different things that didn't work. And even now, I get all these Tea Party newsletters, and they're trying to fight, and it's all based on changing the people in Washington. And here, everybody fought, everybody went out to vote. Big change in Congress as far as the demographics of who's in what seat, but the mentality of Washington is still there. They still want to play games and keep spending the money that people don't have. They're bankrupting our children, and the states really have, and to me, kind of given up their rights over the decades. In fact, over the last 100 years, really, since the changing of the senators to popular election. And it is so important that it be taken back. And I so want to see the states succeed and get the countermand through and be able to take back the country and stop what's going on in Washington. I could not believe the relationships that suddenly formed to get this huge bill through. And the promises made were promises broken.
Let me add something to what you're saying, and the audience might consider this to be one of the real important reasons for this Countermand Amendment to be ratified. And that is this. When it is ratified, the state legislatures will be looked upon by the federal government as partners in government. They will not be looked upon as subjects to federal mandates. They actually will, because of this authority that they will have, they will force the federal government to write laws that are amenable to the states. Isn't that the way it was supposed to be to start with? So that the federal government, as you were just alluding to, won't have the prerogative to say, we're just going to do whatever it is that we feel is based on our ideology or whatever. We're going to do it and force it down the hand. No. They're going to sit back and say, whether they're good guys or bad guys on there, in Congress or in the courts or whatever, that doesn't matter. They're going to look at the law that they're writing or the court decision that they're making or the EPA ruling and they're going to say, wait a minute. We have to consider the fact that the states now can countermand and rescind what we're doing. We better write this in a way that's amenable to the interest of the states so it doesn't get countermanded. That's going to change the whole complexion of how our federal government operates because of this limiting and aspect of authority that's in the state legislatures. Representative Brody, why don't you add something to this as to what you're thinking?
Well, you say it's going to. You're right. It's going to change the dynamic of the elected officials in Washington, but it's also going to change the dynamic of the elected officials at the state level, because there's going to be a keen awareness that now you have a say in what happens in the federal government. Now you're not set up. The Countermand Amendment isn't set up to control the federal government. It's to control. It's to make sure they don't get out of control. I mean, they still do have responsibility, but
that's right.
If they get out of control, you have the ability to have a say. Now, when I ran, as well as I imagine a lot of the state legislators around the country, and you had your list of the things that you wanted to see accomplished in your state. This was your campaign, okay? And everybody has them. But I would venture to say, like myself, there are a lot of things that were federal issues that I actually could not address as a state legislator, but I had to put those as my beliefs because I believe in these principles, and if I had the opportunity, I would start to address them. The Countermand Amendment actually makes these things now as issues in campaigns, because you can campaign on the fact that I don't like this particular issue. I don't like Obamacare, and of course I campaigned on it. I didn't care for Obamacare. I had nothing to do with it. I had no say in it, but I campaigned because I had that principle. But now I have the authority to
yes,
to
isn't that true? Yes.
So the whole dynamic of the campaigns and the people who are going to run the state legislators will change dramatically in that. There'll be a whole new way of campaigning and how you address things and the issues you want to get involved in. When this becomes fact. And I'm saying it as a positive. I start saying should this come, and then I always correct myself because, no, I want so badly for this to happen that we have to start saying it's going to happen.
I do too.
And
I honestly think that the countermand is our last-ditch effort because we, the people, are very angry. I'm looking at a notice right now on Facebook, and it says, the voters this past election gave a mandate to Congress, change the course of our nation, stop Obama and no amnesty for illegal aliens. Boehner and McConnell look like they are going to fall in line with Obama. Once again, the people are being ignored. And that's what they say, and more every day are getting upset.
Well, if you're the person like me who has a few gray hairs, you've lived long enough. On radio you can't see this, but you've lived long enough to know that you are told something and it doesn't come true. You almost get accustomed to it. But you like to be optimistic, and that's what campaigns are about. They're about the optimistic, and then the reality sets in.
And I do believe in this countermand. I do, with all my heart. Charles, we are down to the last 3 minutes of our airtime. Did you want to have any?
I have something I'll close with, and then Representative Brody, we have the custom of closing our meeting in prayer, and so for the last minute and a half or 2 minutes, we'll have that in a moment. But I want the audience to hear this, that the Countermand Amendment has 2 documents, actually 3 when you consider the amendment itself. One is the application. That application is on Congress, directing Congress to convene the Countermand Amendment Convention. When 34 state legislatures adopt that application with identical or near identical wording, especially in the title, and Congress doesn't convene the convention within 60 days as stipulated, then the states, having met their constitutional requirements, can actually convene the convention themselves. But that is the first document. Second document is the amendment itself, already pre-approved by many, many legislators all over the country, and that goes into a document called a delegate resolution. That delegate resolution is the contract between the legislature and their delegates who would go to this Countermand Amendment Convention, and it tells them what their duties are, how to perform it. It lists very specifically how to organize the convention, how to make it a republic, how making sure that voting is based on simple majority, and so forth. That's a very important document, and then how to vote on the amendment which is in that delegate resolution. This is the safest way and the quickest way that we can reclaim our constitutional republic. Now, when the convention convenes with this delegate resolution, guess what? It can be finished in a week because everything that was needed was already deliberated on by the legislatures. And when 26 legislatures decide that this is what they are going to do and adopt this delegate resolution, then the convention is assured to be going in the way that the legislatures want. Actually, I think we're going to get 34 or more delegate resolutions adopted by the states. Now, I'm going to close with a short prayer, but you've got about 20 seconds, Representative Brody, if you